analysts on mainstream channels and mainstream news outlets as well are saying that that's it. The Netanyahu government is about to collapse. How is the Benjamin Netanyahu government about to collapse? According to multiple reports in Israel, it's going to collapse because he is going to force these arrests against the Haredi community. So there was one report in one of the Israeli newspapers saying that Netanyahu's government is on the verge of dissolution. And this is the election date looming. According to this article here, the campaign to continue with the operation to arrest people who are refusing to serve in the Israeli army from the religious community, from the Orthodox community in Israel, is continuing. And it has been made. That's it. It's a decision that has been made from Benjamin Netanyahu. However, that's something that will finally break the coalition apart. From Netanyahu's perspective, if he is going ahead with this operation, despite disagreements that are happening from some members of the coalition or even some members of the Likud party, that could be very problematic. And that would lead to the collapse of the Israeli government. And if he knows that the Israeli government is inevitably going to collapse, this makes him more likely to go and reach a deal and accept a temporary safety net if he needs it, as in if the government doesn't collapse yet, because he would want to extend it to as long as possible. One other reason that he might reach a ceasefire because of this risk is the fact that he won't have that much pressure to recruit people to the Israeli army. Because if he has a ceasefire, what is he going to do? He wouldn't have this operation. He wouldn't have to call for more people to join the army. The last time that Israel gave what it calls Order 8 for people to go and serve to expand the operation in Gaza, over half of them refused. According to reports in Israel, over 70% refused. They reached to that level. They said 50% if we're like kind of being positive. So that would make Benjamin Netanyahu more likely to go and reach a deal. That deal would alleviate the pressure of him. He wouldn't necessarily have all of that pressure for people to go and join the army. He would try and find a balance between the calls inside of the state of Israel to recruit these people and those who don't want to be recruited whatsoever. Because the primary reason that he's going with this operation to arrest people who refuse conscription from the Orthodox community in Israel is the public pressure. Without public pressure, he wouldn't necessarily have that much of a problem. There has been a very long debate inside of Israel about why these people in the religious communities don't serve in the army, and the burden lands always on the secular people. And despite Benjamin Netanyahu time after time saying, oh no, they are going to go and we are going to find a deal, and the list goes on, he always gave them a way out. His current government tried to apply pressure on them in 2024 by delaying the passing of the budget. At the time, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, did not pass the funds for the Orthodox community to try and apply pressure on them to send more people to join the army. That didn't work. And guess what? Benjamin Netanyahu eventually gave them the money. He gave them the money and he continued to let them get away with it despite calls from people that, well, we're in the middle of a war. We are facing the biggest crisis in our history, and we need people from the Orthodox community to come and serve. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to continue. Is there another reason for Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal? Well, the tone is escalating. There has been pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, and there have been protests in Israel, but these protests are only escalating. And now there is an all-out threat coming from the leaders of these protests and these movements inside of Israel, calling for an all-out war if there is no deal. This is one of them, for example. This is the mother of one of the Israeli prisoners of war in Gaza who constantly protests and leads protests against Benjamin Netanyahu. We will wage a full-scale war on the government until we remove you and your ministers from power. You have only one mandate, and that is to bring about a comprehensive agreement for the return of all of the abductees and end the damn war. Give us back our children. This is Matan Tsen Gauker's mother, Einav Tsen Gauker. Not only her, and of course, we're talking about a serious threat here. The protests and the activism in Israel is escalating more and more. Previously, Benjamin Netanyahu, he went to wars to try and deviate. He escalated with Lebanon. He has multiple fronts open now, but clearly an administration inside of the United States that isn't really interested in escalating all of these wars. Whether it's in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, they're out, or in Iran, because they're having all of these talks. So Benjamin Netanyahu is feeling like he's being isolated now. That's it. It's not only, of course, activists. It's also, well, one of them is the previous prime minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak is saying that no, we actually need to collapse them. We need to collapse them, and Netanyahu must be overthrown, according to a recent statement he made. Ehud Barak attacks the prime minister. A difficult diplomatic defeat for Netanyahu, and with it the potential for considerable damage for Israel, he said about Donald Trump's visit to the region. He was talking about the Donald Trump visit, saying how humiliating it was for Benjamin Netanyahu. And according to him, the American president is prioritizing Arab countries and Iran over Israel. Arab countries, Turkey and Iran, and he's not even looking at Israel, according to him, of course. You know, you might have another opinion, but that's according to him. And now he's saying that's it, Netanyahu must be overthrown. So we're having pressure internally, pressure from the streets, pressure from previous prime ministers, pressure from the military establishment. The IDF chief of staff told Benjamin Netanyahu in what was described as Israel a horrific scenario warning from the IDF chief of staff in case they increase the operations side of the Gaza Strip, saying that we will have so many people being killed. And guess what? We are seeing that happening on the ground. The Palestinian resistance and its operations inside of the Gaza Strip in the past several weeks have been intense. Which means the kids will get a good source of omega-3, and now there's even more after time. Now, apart from the talks that are happening inside of Doha, there are many questions. And those questions are surrounding the aid in Gaza. There's been a very interesting move coming recently from a new organization that is supposedly going to start into the Gaza Strip. And that organization is called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, led by a man called Jake Wood. Jake Wood is a man who is a veteran, who has been very tied to the American security establishment, and they are planning to allow aid inside of the Gaza Strip, according to Witkoff as well. He had an interview with CNN too, talking about all of the aid going into the Gaza Strip. Israel has agreed to allow some food into Gaza before a newly approved mechanism for aid deliveries is up and running later this month. The head of the newly established Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, Jake Wood, told CNN's Jeremy Diamond as he explained the foundation's plans to bring in aid. Jake Wood, again, is a man who was in the American Army. He was a man, well, according to some reports, he was dealing with aid in some parts of the world, and he's leading this new organization that plans to allow aid into the Gaza Strip. Now, there are multiple problems with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. One of the problems is, well, firstly, we don't know a lot about them. Newly founded organization. They have been set up in Geneva. They have military roots, and they are also tied with Goldman Sachs. So there was one report describing a bit more, talking a bit more about this organization, right? Geneva Solutions, called News. New Geneva Foundation claims it can feed all of the Gaza Strip with help from mercenaries. And in this article, they were talking about, this group, its roots, where it was founded, and how it gets its money, right? And I personally was trying to find, I don't know, a declaration about this movement. Who is it exactly? I mean, Jake Wood, you can't find a lot about him. But according to Geneva Solutions here, they have military roots, and they apparently saw some documents. So they said in a document destined for government and major donors, the foundation seeks to position itself as a pragmatic operator in the humanitarian field, as well in the security and financial sectors. Its future leadership team is made up of mostly Americans, including several former military personnel. The executive director is Jake Wood, a former U.S. Marine and founder of Team Rubicon, a disaster relief organization composed of tens of thousands of military veterans. In the proposal, the foundation highlights his combat experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as the title of his memoir, Once a Warrior. Steve Witkoff presented the plan to the Security Council at an informal briefing on Wednesday, according to media reports. Again, lots of the stuff is kind of shady. I don't know if it's deliberate. And they're mentioning here that there's a lot of criticism that this foundation could potentially contribute to international crimes. Why are they saying it could contribute to international crimes? Because, well, if we're talking about a newly founded organization that sells itself or pitches itself, and that's why they were formed in Geneva rather than in the United States, although it's the United States really, to attract kind of more donors, appear to be more neutral. Several organizations, including humanitarian organizations, saying that no, this could actually lead to international crimes or crimes against humanity and breaches of international humanitarian law. Why? Because this aid could be aid that is used for political purposes or as part of a military campaign. And aid, humanitarian aid, when it's sent to people, especially people suffering tremendously, like in the Gaza Strip, that would be a breach of international law. That's why the United Nations is still reluctant in supporting this organization or endorsing it, in fear of potentially breaching international law. Now, Another very interesting thing about this organization is that they're tied to Goldman Sachs. They have ties to Goldman Sachs, according to this report, and they're also not specifying how much of the funds that are being processed to them will go as payments to the mercenaries, because you're talking about mercenaries basically leading this organization, and well, some of the payments need to go to them. Therefore, you're talking about big money. At the end of the day, mercenaries get a ton of money, not like volunteers in any relief organization or charities, for example. And also, one of the other criticism that they had against them is the fact that they're outright stating that the Palestinians, each person, will be receiving less than the calories recommended for a normal human being globally. The humanitarian standard, 2,100 calories. They're saying they're going to receive 1,750 calories, similar to what Witkoff said the other day. So in essence, we have an organization tied to the military, tied with financial corporations, very shady, newly developed, going to process aid inside of the Gaza Strip without any talk about the fate of the other organizations that have been constantly providing aid, that people know. There's a lot of ambiguity involved in this organization. However, they're saying that this is the only option moving forward. Now, the organization itself, and Jake Wood himself, said that the organization, no, we're not going to actually be monitoring anyone in Gaza. We're not going to be taking details about the people. We will not be participating actively in any case of displacement, but we will have to coordinate with Israel. And it wouldn't be the Israeli army delivering aid inside of the Gaza Strip. This is the main role here. Why? Because there were lots of debates in Israel previously about the aid. The aid that goes into Gaza is stolen by the resistance movements, and they don't actually give it to the people. All of that propaganda. So the alternative from many in Israel was, well, we need to control the aid directly. So the Israeli army needs to be the side controlling the aid, allowing the aid in, and handing in the aid. But this didn't receive a lot of popularity from the majority of the public. Why? Well, because they know if the Israeli army, if the terror army that has been conducting a genocide, massacring people in Gaza, is going to go there and pretend like they're going to give aid to the people, imagine the people. So people starving, and these people have food. And from their perspective, these were the people and are the people who are causing all of this suffering and misery. So the majority in Israel view this as something very problematic. Although in Netanyahu's government, firstly, there were people who don't want to allow any aid in, by the way, like what Israel is doing now. Israel isn't allowing aid into people. Starvation in Gaza. People are going out for days, sometimes without a meal. Children, infants, many die from starvation. So Israel is using starvation as a tool of war against the population as a result of policies from the Israeli government that is backed by the United States and being legitimized. So the solution that they might agree upon, this movement coming from the United States. And the reason that they're being ambiguous, or one of the reasons that they're being ambiguous, is the fact that they don't want to cause too many problems to try and make it work. However, that doesn't take away from all of the concerns. And the concerns are, well, you're talking about mercenaries. They belong to the United States of America, a country that has participated and facilitated this genocide. And without it, there wouldn't have been any genocide, because they are the main backer of the genocide entity. And what if that turns into something else in the future? Because they're planning to go in as units in Gaza, saying that we're going to form like multiple points, 3 initially to feed 300,000 people immediately in South and Central Gaza. Then we're going to move to the north and establish another point to start feeding all of the population, but as units. So it's something very suspicious. And it's not going to be like the previous mechanism that included Egyptian forces, Qatari forces, with American forces who were kind of sitting in the back, right? No, you're talking about outright an American organization handing in the aid. So these are the risks. On the other hand, this could be the attempt from the United States administration to reassure Israel and reassure Benjamin Netanyahu that, look, okay, you're not going to have the aid, but we're not going to just automatically give the aid to any organization inside of the Gaza Strip, and we're going to control it so that Israel doesn't really have any sort of worry. So, interesting stuff happening. Again, we've been there before. I mean, there were situations before where, 24 hours, crucial 24 hours, talk, positivity, lack of positivity, pessimism, no pessimism, and things failed afterwards. We were in a situation where there was a ceasefire that was breached. Is it going to be different this time? There are no guarantees. The Palestinian side is saying we're not entering any sort of ceasefire if it's temporary. But some reports are contradicting that, saying that no, indeed, we are talking about a temporary ceasefire. Netanyahu is saying that we will enter a ceasefire, but we will never guarantee the ending of the war. He wants to keep the option of the war like indefinite, because it's his key for survival, his means of buying more time and serving his own interest. However, tomorrow or later on by midnight, there might be some developments that will reflect or show us indeed what's happening. Of course, not much gets published usually when the talks reach a very intense level, but usually the closer we get to that stage, similar to where things were before the last ceasefire took place, the more information leaks and gets out to the public.